Says we're recording. Good. So first off, reopening task force. I know a lot of people think we haven't gotten a lot done yet because you all want to get back inside, but we have been working really, really hard. There are an incredible number of things to be considered before we can bring this community that we all care about and all the people that we care about in it back indoors at our facilities. So I'm on the task force. Jana is on the task force, and I was really happy to have Jana join us because of her experiences with facilities for families, and also because she's a mother of a child in our RE program. The other person in her generation who's on the task force but couldn't be with us today is Morgan Martin, who has a couple of young children. She's traveling right now, so wasn't able to join us today. We also had Allison McKee for a while. She does childcare for us more than participates in our service activities. But she had an interesting and different perspective to add that the rest of us didn't have. She works for the Georgetown Chamber of Commerce, and they've been doing in-person meetings since at least last fall. So her perspective was a lot different than the rest of us who have, or that have stayed, you know, more inside and in very, very small bubbles of people that we might be interacting with. And then Michelle, who's a bundle of energy, and also hopefully some of the stuff that we're discussing, you know, she's a great link between the reopening task force and the Sunday services team. So I've been very happy to have this team to work with us. We had 111 responses, which I think probably represented more like 120 to 130 people to the survey, which I thought was a fantastic response. And I want to start by sharing that with you guys. Now, we've taken the survey and created a PowerPoint. And let me bring that up. Give me just a second. Oh, it doesn't like me doing it that way. Let's see. Did that come on? Can you guys see that? It is. Okay. So hopefully everybody can see our slides. As you can see by this, the big green field are people 61 to 80, and the purple field are 81 plus. So we definitely, as a congregation, skew toward the older side. But I don't think that was new information for anybody. Children that were represented by their parents' answers. We had 6 parents who replied that had 1 child and 7 parents who had 2. So 20 children 12 and under were represented in the answers, and including our children in everything that we do is really important to us. We don't want to have a community where we segregate out either the children or the children and their parents from the rest of us, because the young children at this point still can't be vaccinated. We had, let's see, I wrote down what this was, 4 13 to 17-year-olds represented. A lot of people are eager to attend services at the first opportunity. 37% first opportunity, another 27% with some precautions. Some of the people who weren't sure when they were going to return. 80% vaccination rate was cited by 2 different people. The county right now of people eligible to be vaccinated, so that's people 12 and up, 58% as of last Monday were vaccinated out of that group. The county is only publishing new numbers every Monday, about every Monday afternoon. So it'll be tomorrow before we find if that's gone up. The last several weeks, it's gone up by a fraction of 1% each week. So it's really slowed down. It's creeping up very slowly. This one, I'm going to hide you guys. We seem to skew a little bit more toward people who are uncomfortable being around unvaccinated people than people who are comfortable. It's almost 50-50, but it skews a little bit more toward the uncomfortable. Almost all of us are fully vaccinated. We had one person respond that they were partially vaccinated. And since they did this about a month ago, I'm assuming that that person has finished their vaccination plan. One who's waiting for their opportunity, and a couple who didn't want to share information with us. So I think when we return to activities at the fellowship, we can be pretty confident that most of the people who are attending with us have been vaccinated if they can be. This slide kind of represented the kind of precautions people individually were willing to take. So a majority is willing to wear a face mask, and we're going to require that people wear face masks, at least in the beginning, even though we know everybody's fully vaccinated. And I'll go into that rationale behind that a little bit later. Most people or about half of us understand that coming back is going to be different. A lot of people have been isolated from people for a long time. Not everybody's comfortable yet shaking other people's hands or going in for that big hug. So we're going to have to be mindful of that. We're going to have to respect people's boundaries, and, talk with each other. Hey, you want a hug? Are you okay with this or not? That's new behavior for a lot of us, and that's something we're all going to have to navigate. Most people are willing to bring hand sanitizer. We're going to have plenty of hand sanitizer available. Thank you, Jana. Not so much on the social distancing, but we're going to try and set things up so that there's at least some social distancing. The people who checked this slide represents a lot of their comments, and I'm just going to leave it up for a moment so that you can see some of the things that they said. And we actually have 2 slides with other reasons. So I'm going to pop up the other one. Okay, most of the parents who responded, which would not be the purple are the folks who don't have kids or grandkids that they're bringing, but most of the parents responded that they would want to bring their children into worship service, RE, or the nursery, either with whatever preconditions we put on or under the right conditions. And those comments were sprinkled in at the very end of the survey. They didn't have a place here to put comments. 73% of people would like to attend. This was you could check as many as you wanted slide. So you had lots of options on this one. So 73% of the folks responding said that, you know, they're willing to attend worship in the sanctuary. Another 43, if we were to set up an overflow area outside on the deck, they'd be willing to brave the heat and sit out there. 36%, I'm sorry, getting my numbers, raw numbers and percents mixed up. 36% would like to stay home and still have some sort of online service. And of the people who still wanted to stay home and have some sort of online service, there was a slight preference to doing it live stream. So it would be being recorded at the same time as the service was taking place, and they could watch it then, as opposed to watching something pre-recorded. So these are the precautions that folks expect us, or the leadership at San Gabriel, to take. High on the list was providing hand sanitizer, requiring face masks, reducing the number of people in the room, encouraging social distancing. Those two kind of go hand in hand. Discouraging handshaking, increasing ventilation came up, especially in some of the other comments. So these are all some of the things we're taking into consideration as we develop the guidelines for gathering again. These are, leave this up for a moment. These are some of the other reasons that people were suggesting to us. The reminder not to attend if you are not feeling well, that's something that we're going to be taking very seriously. We're trying to determine what we can do to increase the airflow and ventilation, but not have the noise of the air conditioner drown us out, which is going to be a challenge. And here are some more other reasons that people cited. Ron is right now, somebody's opening the windows. You know, today wouldn't be a good day, but we are in the process of getting a bid to get all the windows screened, so we could open the windows and not have some of the wildlife experiences that Jana and the kids had. And more other reasons. I found this slide, probably the most interesting and the most difficult to kind of square with what are we going to do. 29% of folks are happy when they come back to have the sanctuary filled with capacity. And my recollection pre-pandemic is that probably 70-ish of the 90 chairs were generally full. Another 29% would like us to reduce the capacity to 3/4. And another 27 would only like us to have 27 or 50% capacity. So that presents us with a dilemma. If we were to aim for somewhere between 50 and 75%, who stays home? You know, how do we do that? Do we count heads as people are coming in the door and say, sorry, you're number 52. Try us again next week. Do we have a reservation system? Do we go to 2 services? Not a popular option with Sunday services. You know, what do we do to accomplish those ends? Later on in the comments, somebody suggested we do it alphabetically, and if you're in this part of the alphabet, you come this week. If you're another part, you come another week. Someone else pointed out to me that, well, if you do that, I'll never get to see the people in the other part of the alphabet. So do we have a rotating scramble of the alphabet? I mean, there's all different kinds of things to consider given this comfort level of attendance. There was not any support to continue doing the pre-recorded services, but have a watch party in the sanctuary for that. I think we're all, if you want to watch the service, you want to be comfortable sitting on your sofa or wherever it is you happen to sit. This was not necessarily for part of reopening, but it was to give some feedback to Sunday services, what kind of audience level we've had for our YouTube services. So, well over 50% are watching at least a couple of times a month. But there is the small percentage that we're not reaching at all, whether it's the technology, they just didn't want to have that kind of interaction. I don't know the answers for that. Then the last part are just a variety of other comments that people gave us. And there's 3 or 4 slides. So I'll give each one a few seconds. Okay, I'm going to take this share down. And there's a couple things in the chat. Let me see what we've got there. Okay. I want to see if anybody has any questions from what was just presented. We have a couple of other things to present. We have a, excuse me, guidelines that are still in development, but we're hoping to finalize them and get them up within the week for reopening, and a covenant of care that we're going to put in place. So first I want to see if there's any questions from the survey before I turn this to the other sharing. Mimi?
You mentioned the possibility of live streaming, so some people could stay home and while others were. How difficult is that technologically? I don't know how that would work, and is that hard to do? Or
I am not the person to answer that. Michelle, maybe?
Rob, do you want to chime in on this one? So we need to explore that further.
Yeah.
You need to have really good camera. You need to have really good microphones. You need to have really good broadband width. So before we could consider live streaming, those would be some of the mechanics that we would need to look at. there have been, the UUA has been great about trying to have information up for us to read and learn from, and they've got a training class. But their caution was, do you have the personnel to run this? Because it isn't just one person. Now you would be talking about a sound person like Frank and who else was running the back, you know, our speaker systems. Now you're going to have 2 or 3 people running things. So that for me is a big concern, because a lot of people are already involved in a lot of things. Secondly, what's come out in some discussions with our families, they don't necessarily want their children to be videoed and then be put up on the internet. Some people would like to just come to church very casual, and they don't necessarily want to be in a video. So then you start, well, could we just have the camera focusing only on the pulpit area and swivel to when the musicians are playing? Is that a possibility? How easy or how annoying is that going to be, having that camera equipment? So Mimi, thank you for that question. Rob, did you have something you want to add to that?
Sure. I watched the live stream service from First UU Houston this morning. And from what I could observe, they had at least 2 cameras in the sanctuary, possibly 3 or 4. And they're transitioning between between the cameras smoothly. So there's some equipment or software that they're using to do that. Also, they have multiple microphones set up, you know, one at the pulpit, obviously, and then several for musicians and instruments. So there's some sound mixing going on. So there, and one thing I noticed during the service is that several times the cameras would zoom in and out to change the framing. So there were operators for the cameras. There's somebody operating the video mixing. I don't know if that's correct terminology, but and then somebody's taking care of the audio. One thing I found interesting is that I could pause the live. This was a live stream service, but I could pause it if I wanted to, and then restart it. And then if I wanted to return to live stream, I could do that. And I did that. I paused it, restarted it, and then it returned to live stream. So there was a bit of a skip, which I found interesting. So there's some, we could do this perhaps with a single camera, perhaps a few different mic inputs and some, sound mixing, and probably some equipment and software items that we would need to mix the video and the audio, and then send it out over the internet, and so it can be accessed, perhaps via like a YouTube live channel.
One of the concerns that I have about
I have some more additional comments here. One thing I heard was that the minister commented that during the service that all the members present in the sanctuary were masked, except for the musicians and the people speaking at the pulpit. No video of members were shown during the service. Only musicians and speakers at the pulpit, of which there were several. They, at the very end, the minister walked down into the aisle of the sanctuary, and the camera focused on the minister and picked up 2 or 3 members. You could see the members from the rear. You couldn't see them from the front, and they were masked.
So, noted disclaimer, First UU Houston has several hundred members. They have a budget of 800,000+. They ran what they called a small capital campaign of $290,000 to reopen. They totally revamped their HVAC system. They bought equipment. They have a staff of 9 people, which one of the people on their staff is an AV technician. So they're in a different league than we are, for sure. Doesn't mean we can't do this, But my main concern is we have an HVAC system that is very, very noisy. And it had been the practice to try and pre-cool the building so that it wouldn't run, or it would run minimally during services. In order to have the ventilation that we need in the building for us to feel safe and comfortable opening the building up to large numbers of people in it, the fan on the HVAC system needs to be on. And I'm not sure if you can record a service in there and not have all that noise picked up. I know when you guys were recording Reverend Sandy, I think you had the system turned off. So that's a really big consideration. And we are going to be, we're still looking into what our options are with the HVAC. Let's put it that way.
And the few times we were recording Reverend Sandy with the HVAC on because the building was warm, some folks viewing the recorded service complained about the background noise.
Dave?
So I guess I've had my shots. I'm comfortable. I'm not too worried about catching COVID. However, it's not just COVID. This year, because everybody's wearing masks, everybody's been socially distancing, all these things, flu, colds, a whole bunch of respiratory diseases have been down. And that's kind of neat. One of the things I think we ought to do is I think we ought to have a box of the paper masks. So if somebody comes there and, well, one, I hope if people are sneezing and coughing a lot at home, I kind of like it if they didn't bother coming, because there's other things I can catch besides COVID. And that'd be kind of a nice thing, a nice courtesy. But if somebody comes and they find out along the way, they're starting to sneeze, perhaps an allergy, if we have masks that they can put on. So if somebody is sneezing or coughing, I would feel comfortable wearing a mask just because I'm sneezing and coughing.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a stiff neck, sneezing at my elbow doesn't work. I'm still 6 inches from my elbow. I would like to have something that I could put on if I found out I was going to be sneezing and didn't. And right now I'm carrying a mask all the time, and I may continue that for quite a while. But having some masks there, just a box of the paper ones, the throwaways, I think that'd be a good courtesy. I think it'd be good to look at what we can do with the air conditioning. I don't think we necessarily want to require that we get it all upgraded before we start back to services. But there's a lot of reasons to have good ventilation and air conditioning. It could damp down a lot of airborne diseases forever. And it could also make it so you can run the air conditioner perhaps during services and not have to pre-cool and just coast through the services. I think that would probably be pretty expensive, and I think it would be something we need to look at, but perhaps getting somebody to look at it and see what it would take to different levels and what we could do to bring it up to a better level as a partway thing without having to completely redo it, without having to put in throwaway type of stuff. So an analysis type of thing.
Right.
And third, if we're going to have social hour, meet and greet, I think it'd be good to have it out on the patio if it's not raining, where we do have fresh air. Just have the coffee out there, and people can even get a coffee and walk out onto the lawn or something. So it'd be easier to social distance. The social hour area, the meet and greet, is the place where you really have the most crowding, I believe. And the other thing is for handshaking and hugging, stuff like that, the culture I personally was raised in just didn't include that. Maybe it's because a lot of farmers and people that work with their hands were dirty. Guys didn't shake hands, they just said hi. You know, this fist bumping, elbow bumping, you can do namaste, you can do all sorts of things. And I just don't see a reason for any of it personally. I try to go along when things are going on, you know. And I got one hugging buddy there at church. She's already had COVID and I've got the shot. So I don't know that I'm going to worry a lot about it. But I think it'd be better just to talk to people rather than all the touchy-feely stuff personally.
Everything you brought up, Dave, we're working on.
Okay.
As you'll see later, you know, we'll take a couple more questions right now, and then we're going to share the guidelines that we're working on. And masks, stay home if you don't feel well. All of that is all addressed.
Good.
Keith, you had your hand up.
Well, just a couple of things on the microphones. If we're going to have a broadcast that we're happy with, we're going to have lavalier mics or mics where each speaker has a microphone on them. And once we've done that, the HVAC issue is not going to be an issue for the live stream. It's not, you're not going to have sound issues if you have proper miking, but that will mean more than one microphone input, which means a sound mixer. So at the very least, you could do it with one camera possibly if you're just focusing on who's at the podium and possibly the choir. One camera I think would be acceptable. But what people will not find acceptable is just the onboard microphone on an iPad or we've got to have lavalier mics. So then you're talking about a soundboard and sound mixing. So just from my experience, that's one thing we'd have to look at for live streaming. And just in terms of capacity amounts and ventilation, you know, we're 96% vaccinated. You know, some of us have been back at work in our workplaces. We've been back full staff in my department since the beginning of May. And there's no longer, I mean, I don't know of any place that has a mask requirement anymore. So, and these are places where we can have an expectation of no more than 60% of people who are vaccinated. So I guess I'm just bringing a different perspective. I mean, I think we, as places go in society, we're about as safe as you can get. 96% of us are vaccinated. So, yeah, I'll just say that, you know, Dana and I are going to work every day. Nobody's wearing masks. I understand that children are a different element, but I think children are also probably most of them going to school, and we're going to school. So I just think we have to kind of look at our situation and compare that to other places that people are going all the time, going to H-E-B, going to the store, and just be mindful of what precautions we need to take.
Thanks, Keith. Jackie, and then I'll get to Jana.
One quick question for Rob. How was it that you were able to connect to the live stream? Did you have to get special connection permission?
If you go onto First UU's website, right on their opening page, they had a box to click on for attending their live stream service. It's very easy. Just click on it and boop, it pops up.
And is that something that's still available, or was it just during that time period, do you know?
They had 2 live streams this morning, one at 9:30, one at 11:30. And I'm guessing that they're also recording.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Jana?
So about the vaccination percentage and so forth. So my son is underneath the vaccination age, and he did attend summer school. So his school made mask optional, but whenever I talked to him, you know, what was really going on, 80% of the students were still wearing masks during summer school indoors. So they would take them off if they were outside in the playground and they got hot, but they were still wearing masks. There's also an expectation with the Delta variant kind of becoming more and more common, and it's so contagious from what I've researched, that I want him to continue to wear masks when out in public. And so I'd like for people to model that behavior for him, that, you know, there's this new thing, it's really contagious. You know, kids are getting it. And especially, we don't know how this is going to affect children. And also, from what I understood with the vaccine, is it does not keep you from getting COVID. It keeps you from being hospitalized and dying from COVID. And so, you know, I don't think anybody wants to get sick. So, you know, as far as the kids go, I know my son finds it comforting whenever he's around masked people, because he saw that in school. He experiences that whenever we go out. So there's like this psychological thing with my child and people wearing masks and him feeling protected. So that's the things I think that kind of differ from work situations whenever you're around all adults and they can kind of make that decision for themselves and do their own risk assessment whenever versus a child who is also doing their own risk assessment. And we talked to him a lot about mask wearing. And there's some really interesting conversations that happened around summer school, but you know, he likes it. It makes him feel safe. He will actually like ask his friends like, hey, can you pull your mask up? Because, you know, you're too close. And so I know at the beginning, there was a lot of rumors in school districts that, you know, kids didn't want to wear masks and it was an issue for them. And my son represents the part that to where it wasn't an issue for him. It actually made him feel safer, made him less anxious. So I also know that there's the other side of the coin to where some children have exactly opposite. It's claustrophobic. It makes them, you know, feel fearful. So I can understand both sides of that coin. But I can speak to our experience to where masks make him feel safer. And, you know, I also don't want to get the Delta variant and I don't want to pass it to him. I don't want to pass it to anybody else that I'm around that's not vaccinated. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, thanks, Jana. I just want to, and I didn't say this earlier, and you know, we approach this as this is our church. We are a covenantal community, and we want to make sure that everybody is included, that we're not excluding anybody because of their vaccine status, because of their health status. And we want, you know, I personally, and I'm hoping everybody else, you know, we value the children amongst us and that they are part of our congregation and they should be included to the extent that we generally include our children in our congregational activities. So we don't want to exclude them because parents will leave them at home and not come. And that means we're excluding the whole families because they don't feel it's a safe environment to put their children in. And I don't know whether it was Susan or Sarah that had their hand up first. I'll go with Susan and then we'll go to Sarah.
Yeah, so I just wanted to speak as the choir director. The issue about singing is a little bit different because singing is a super spreader event. And so it's a little bit, the UU Music Ministries group that I belong to, they're being a little bit more cautious, and there's a lot of different protective ways of doing the singers and having them outside and piping them in or having them segregated from everyone else. The reason that singing is a super spreader event is because you're actually taking in a deep breath of air and you're pushing out a big stream of air when you're singing. So it's more than an ordinary talking type of thing. And it's more likely to spread whatever, you know, there is, including this new Delta variant and everything else. And of course, in terms of percentages of people vaccinated in the community, you know, you have to be careful not to think of, well, how many people within our subgroup are vaccinated. It's the county that counts. Like with measles, kids are considered safe from the vaccine being able to replicate once the community is 90% vaccinated, not the school the kids belong to. So we have to be looking at our community for percentages and stuff like that. Any case, I went ahead and gave a couple of different options to the reopening committee as to what the choir could do, including keeping it virtual. And I went back to the choir and asked what the choir wanted to do. And the choir actually wants to remain virtual for now. They feel that that's safer for the time being. So that's what the choir is going to be doing. And I'll leave the whole congregational singing to the reopening committee, what they want to do with that. But just to let you know that singing is a little bit different issue. Thank you.
Thanks, Susan. I want to hear what Sarah has to say, and then I'm going to turn it over to Jana to share the guidelines that we have developed so far. We're close to finalizing them, but you know, we wanted to give you folks the opportunity to see them. Go ahead, Sarah.
Hi, I was actually just going to tack on to Jana's comments. At least 4 out of the 20 children represented in the survey are homeschooled and do not attend any sort of large group school environment. And a number of others out of that 20 are also too young to be in school and don't attend childcare programs or anything else. So a good percentage of the 20 that responded do not encounter any sort of group situation. So they haven't necessarily embraced that potential risk at this point for the kids under 12.
Okay, thanks for that. Jana, if do you want to control what you're sharing, or do you want Michelle to share it?
Michelle can share it
Okay.
if she's
Well,
got.
So,
while
You
you
want me
guys
to
are getting
share?
that set up, Marcia, it looks like you had your hand up. No? Okay.
okay, that one. Hold on.
That's
So I'm
okay.
trying to share
So
screen.
while Michelle gets this set up, at the very beginning of your chat, if you open up the chat box, there is the phased gating from the Williamson County Health District. And so this spreadsheet that you're going to see here is based off Williamson County's designation of our county as far as what color it is in. So right now we are in yellow. If you ever wanted to research which color we were in, you can go to that link. You can click on it now and then bookmark it, and you can check and see. With summer starting up, those of us are really that follow the numbers are really interested to see how our gating criteria might change and how, you know, this is all going to play out through summer. So here we go. Okay, so Michelle, can you make that bigger? I don't know if anyone else can see.
I've got it on full Zoom. Would you rather try to share your screen and see if you can control that better?
Sure.
So I'll stop share.
I'm wondering if I can get it in a present stage so it would be
Okay.
here. Okay.
Did you get it?
No, I don't think so. I think full screen. Okay, I'm gonna see if this will work. Because I selected full screen, so this is gonna be about the biggest that I can get.
So folks, what we did, we had categories like for the main building, the fellowship house, the little house, when could worship, what would be the guidelines for worship, what would be the guidelines for small groups, the staff, mask wearing, social distancing. We address handshaking in this chart, our HVAC system. And then Pat did a great job, got the idea from some other churches with the color coding to match kind of what the color coding is for our county, etc. So are you, I see it. Go for it, Jana.
Okay, so like I said, the colors are going to correlate with what Williamson County Health District decides. So we don't decide what color it is. We're going by what the county numbers are showing. So right now we're in the yellow phase, which is medium community spread. or moderate community spread. So it goes along and tells you what those numbers need to be. There's also a timeline correlated with this. It needs to be either at or reducing for, I believe it's 2 weeks, correct, Pat?
Yeah, 14
Yes.
days. Yeah.
14 days.
14 days. And if you open that other color chart, it'll show you, you know, what if numbers are decreasing, you know, what that looks like and what you need to get to. And then at the bottom, it says, well, what if you're here and you're increasing, what takes you to the next level? So it's a really good color chart that'll explain a lot of this. So these numbers came from that chart. We are in yellow right now. So the covenant of care, we're going to go over in this meeting, I believe,
Mhm.
right, Pat?
Yes.
And so
Yes.
that document, Pat did a great job of kind of putting our UU beliefs into how do we show care for others in our congregation, and how are we mindful of this transition that all of us are going through, you know, whether you're older, younger, have a family, you've lost someone to COVID, you've had COVID, or, you know, you've only heard it swarming around you. We need to be mindful of all of that in our congregation. So we broke it down as far as the buildings go, because they all have different HVAC requirements and space, you know, limitations. So the main building can hold up to 20 people. Staff can opt out of being in the building when inside groups meet. This was put in there because if you need a sound mixer, it would be asking permission to see if they would like to join and arrive there. We didn't necessarily want to assume that if you needed sound or you needed music, that that person was obligated to come to your meeting if they didn't feel comfortable at that point in time. So again, this is respect for those people that, you know, kind of do the admin, the sound, setup, cleanup, all that kind of stuff. It's their body, it's their choice. The fellowship house also has window units. No, fellowship house is the one with the central AC. So we took off the plates, we got the model numbers and went back to those manuals and calculated out air changes per hour, because the UUA gives us examples on how many air changes need to be in that building to really reduce the risk of viral spread. And so that goes along with flu, colds, you know, and also COVID. So it has main AC unit. And so for that one, we think 10 adults or 8 mass socially or the 8 mask and socially distanced children. It's a much smaller space. Some of that space is taken up by the kitchen and that little office in the back. So that's why you see the really reduction of the numbers. The little house has the window units, and right now we're going to leave that up to DRE and board, because window units, we are having a really hard time finding out, you know, the air changes per hour. The filters are washable. So we can't necessarily put like a grade on those filters like we can on the fellowship house and the little house. For HVAC units, there is a meeting set up with the professional on Tuesday. And, you know we need MERV 13 or higher filters, and we want to make sure that the system can handle that. And we want to make sure that we don't end up causing more damage to our system whenever there might be tweaks that we can do to achieve the goals and still, you know, have that system running for as long as we need it to run. So no contact drive-through, walk-through. So it would be limited to approximately 1 per month or special events. This looks like what we did for Halloween. You know, the drive-by trick-or-treating, which was, you know, no contact. And we as families went around to the different members who signed up, and the kids were able to trick or treat on the trick or treat trail. It might also look like an outside like art gallery that you drive through or drive by. That kind of opens it up to more creative things that could either be used for fundraising or celebrations.
Jana, I think it also sort of describes what Karina's been doing with RE for most of the past year as well, where people came and picked up the packets once a month.
Yes, yes. For those of you that don't know, we had a sign up sheet, and so we alternated when families would be there for those events, and they're all outdoors. So worship service right now is going to stay online. Children and youth outside to be determined with DRE and board input. No inside children youth activities quite yet, because we still want to make sure that those kiddos are, safe, and y'all guys can handle the heat. I know you can. It's Texas. So we're willing to brave the heat until we kind of get some more information, especially on this Delta variant that's running around. Nursery and childcare, right now it's closed because those are the little tiny babies. And from the research that I had seen, 4 years and younger actually had a pretty high rate of hospitalization. And so we want to follow the research some more and find out, how we can keep those kiddos safe. And they will be the last to be vaccinated because they're the youngest. Staff. So staff may work at the building or home. Staff interaction per CDC guidelines for vaccinated and unvaccinated people, and personal comfort level. Again, we want those who work for us to be able to feel safe and to have that autonomy over their bodies and make the decision that they are most comfortable with. Guidelines for all. If you're not feeling well, please stay home. This is one of the best ways to mitigate viral spread. I know that we have a lot of allergies that happen in Central Texas. I had talked to many people that ended up positive for COVID, and they originally thought that it was allergies. And so, it takes, you have to balance that pressure of, you really need to go to church, you need that support with, but I'm feeling really run down and stressed, and I've got a cough. And so if you need that extra support, feel free to reach out to the admin, and maybe we can pull that in through a one-on-one Zoom or something. We want to support the congregation, but we really need people to take personal responsibility for how they're feeling and to stay at home whenever they are not feeling well. It goes with colds and flus and all that. Also, it's viral mitigation. So it's not just COVID that we're aiming for reducing. So meeting time limits and exposure time. We know that this thing kind of builds up the longer that you're with someone. Group meetings inside should try to limit the length of their meetings as much as possible. Aim for 45 to 60 minutes max. That's kind of self-explanatory. The longer you're around more people with close proximity, the more likely that viral load in the room will build up, and the more likelihood that it could be spread. Mask. So face mask required when present with others not in your household, even if you are vaccinated. I touched on this a little bit before as far as being a mom of a kid who could not be vaccinated. I think Sarah made a very good point that a lot of us have gone out of our way to keep our children away from crowds, and we've made a lot of sacrifices to this point. And a personal note, the way that I feel is it would be respectful of the sacrifices that I've asked my child to make and me, if you'd be willing to wear a mask just for a little bit longer so we can figure out what's going on with this thing. There's still a lot of unknowns. So even if you're vaccinated, we're going to ask that you wear the mask. This is in consideration for those present who may be unvaccinated due to medical issues or age or other issues, or at risk for severe disease. Social distance. We're going to do our best to maintain that 6 feet with those outside of the same household. I know a lot of us have kind of been trained to this because we saw the circles on the floor, and you stand here and then the person in front of you waits there. So I think you'll also find people like myself, if you're standing too close, I'll take a step back. And so I feel like between us being kind of conditioned and those of us that are a little weary of stepping back into crowds, I think we can work together. So if someone steps back, then maybe just be mindful of like, oh, maybe they're feeling a little, nervous, and don't take a step forward of them to kind of close in that space. Again, it's being conscious that all of us are going through a transition right now. And everybody's going to handle and be triggered by different things. Handshakes and hugs only with consent between parties. I've experienced this myself, and I really appreciate it, to where whenever someone says, oh my goodness, can I hug you? You'll find with me, I do not do handshakes. I will do this little wave, and you will see it. And that means hi. That's the only thing that I've been able to come up with in alternating a handshake. So if you hold out your hand to me, my way of coping with that is going to be to do this. And so that's the same as me giving you a handshake. Everybody's going to adapt and accommodate different ways through this. So contact tracing. So we'd like to know if our mitigation protocols are working. And so whenever you reserve an inside or outside meeting space with the administrator, that's going to be posted on, I think, the website. Then you need to keep an attendance log, please. It'll be in a spiral notebook. It's as simple as your name, we need it legible, and your phone number, email address, possibly the best way that we can contact you. So if you're in a meeting and someone is positive, then we're able to say, okay, we can keep confidentiality. We don't have to necessarily release your name, but we would like everyone to know that there was a positive person in that group. That also goes for the fact that we're a caring community. And if someone does end up, getting it or contracting it, we want to be able to check in on you. How are you doing? Do you need meals? Are you having trouble getting to your doctor's appointments? That kind of stuff. So it goes on both sides of being informational and us allowing to contact trace, but also being a caring community and caring for one another. Health. So by signing the covenant of care, you indicate you will only be present on campus if you are feeling well, and you will immediately contact the board president if you or a family member test positive within 48 hours of attending SGUUF. So again, if you have a meeting on your calendar, you might want to put like a little asterisk 2 days after that and make sure that you're symptom free. And if you do come down sick, then look back at your calendar and see if possibly you were on campus at a meeting, and let us know that. The best way for us to be able to mitigate the spread is going to be able to find out what's working to mitigate it, what's, keeping it from spreading. And we want to make sure that everyone is as safe as possible and as comfortable as possible, and, not as anxious as some of us are whenever we have to go out. So sanitizing hands, there will be plenty of hand sanitizer there. Sanitizing surface and spaces, disinfect the area and equipment before and after use. This is something kind of new. So we will have signs posted and possibly like a walkthrough on which surfaces you need to focus on, which disinfectants to use and how to use them effectively, what the kill time of those disinfectants are. Some of them it's, instantaneous. Others, they might need to sit on the surface for 2 minutes before it's completely dry. The HVAC system, we've been working on this quite a bit. So like I said, they've got a meeting on Tuesday to get even more information, but during every use of the building, the HVAC must be turned on so as to attain the maximum air changes per hour, and the fan needs to be set to on, not auto. At the end of the meeting, it needs to be returned to normal programming. And so if you put it on auto, once it gets down to 73 degrees, it's going to shut off, and that air changes per hour is going to go down. So that's why we're asking that you keep the fan on instead of allowing it to be on auto. We need that fan changing out the air and moving it a certain amount of time for that volume. Group leaders. Groups must have a group leader that reserves the space in advance online, makes sure everyone signs in and out, make sure the building is sanitized and the building is closed and locked up per protocol. So if you want to have a meeting, get ready to take on a little bit of extra responsibility. We're going to make it as easy as possible, but there are going to be some steps that you'll need to perform. Building security, make sure the building is closed and locked per protocol. If we do get screens on the windows, or if any windows are open, you need to make sure that those are really locked. They are a little older, and so you really have to make sure that they get pushed down, and whenever it locks, you usually want to retest them to push up to make sure that that lock caught. Food. Right now, we have no sharing of food or drink. Food or drink makes people take their mask off. You also have the handling of the food, and it's a complicated task to take care of and tackle safely. So for right now, with the viral mitigation protocols that we have in place, we're asking that there's no sharing of food or drink. So if you want to bring your own snacks or you want to bring your own coffee, that's fine. But right now, I think coffee and conversation would be just that, is that you would have your own coffee that you would bring, and then you could go to the deck, which is a great recommendation. Go to the deck and visit out there and touch base with each other. As Susan addressed, no choir or singing right now. And then we are going to follow all the posted COVID guidelines on the website, and we will have signs posted. So CDC, so I'm going to add something a little extra onto this, and I don't know if Amy Dworon is on this call, but CDC is actually recommending that children wear masks in school if they're not vaccinated. So some of us are following that to see what that's going to do to Texas public schools, because right now they don't have to wear them. They can't make them wear them. It's the child's choice. So as far as children and mask wearing in schools, I think that we're going to kind of see a shift between now and maybe when school starts in some situations in some school districts. Any questions?
Sarah has a question.
Hi, thanks, Jana. I just had a quick question because I can't recall with the guidelines changing so frequently. In one of the categories you mentioned that in order for contact tracing, you're hoping that people will notify if there's a positive within 48 hours following any sort of church event attended. I'm not remembering where that 48 hours came from. I thought it was anytime during that like potential 10 days of possible spread.
I'll address that because I put that in there. So CDC, I got that from the CDC, but you bring up a good point. And I think, that we should increase that. I think anybody, I actually up to 14 days, probably. Jana, do you have any thoughts on that? Because you work so closely with all of this.
No, I mean, it makes sense to up it to 14 days. We also think about compliance, as far as if people will be able to comply with that. So I think the thing is that we know that viral shedding happens the most right before symptoms occur in the first few days. And so I think we were trying to capture that that window of when someone is really going to be contagious, and really be shedding those viral particles. I would have no objection to upping it to 2 weeks. I think that we really would need to recommend a calendar type of situation to where, you have it on your calendar, whether it's a paper or a digital one. And then, as a courtesy to our protocols, 2 weeks later, you mark it again and, have I been sick? Do I need to notify SGUUF? Because 2 weeks is a decent amount of time. But I'd be willing to do that. It just depends on if others would be willing to kind of implement that system on their own.
Okay, if I could, because I think that there are two issues going on. I think recommending the board should be done immediately or as soon as the information is found. And then it's up to the individual, I feel, to follow the 14-day isolation protocol. So I'm not, in terms of notifying.
I don't think we're talking about the isolation protocol. We're talking about the fact that someone can be contagious and not necessarily show any symptoms for 14 days. And so, yes, you would put that marker on your calendar. And if you became sick or ill, you would notify the board right away. And then quarantining would be up to them. So that's another, 10 days they actually dropped quarantining after you become sick.
Just before we move on from that question, there's, to your point, as you mentioned, several people thought it was just allergies. That's really what I was thinking in terms of that 48 hours. If you do lengthen that time, they may have symptoms and just not associate it with COVID for a number of days. I also don't, maybe it's just me, but you all know each other, have known each other a lot longer as an example, but I'm not really concerned about individuals who do test positive notifying the board necessarily. I mean, everyone here and people in the congregation, they all have near constant contact with other members in the congregation. Like someone will find out that someone had COVID, and remind that, oh, hey, you attended that meeting 3 or 4 days ago, or whatever it is. I don't want to feel as though it's some sort of taint or negativity associated with, having a positive COVID infection, which is something that, has been experienced a lot over the course of this past year. Making assumptions that proper precautions are not being taken, or, you're an anti-vaxxer or something along those lines. So I don't want it to feel as though it's a punitive thing. You have to notify the board and you have to mark these days on your calendar and all these requirements. I mean, I think it's gonna happen naturally anyway.
Yeah, the notification for the board is just, that's the point of contact for the congregation. So because the board would have then access to the sign-in logs, and they could just contact that small group instead of the exposure that we had at the flower communion, where we didn't have that attendance log. So we had to notify the entire congregation. It's just to limit how many people we're having to spread the news to. Rob, did you have?
Maybe a simpler approach is just anybody who feels sick, you notify the board, and then the board just looks back 2 weeks and notifies people who attended in that time frame.
Okay, you do run the risk of me calling the board every morning when I wake up, though.
With the exception of Spoon.
Okay.
Well, and also speaking to that 48-hour timeline. So if you go to a meeting and you feel sick and you go get COVID tested, I know at least at the Georgetown Library, they're getting results back in 48 hours. So, you would go get tested and then you would know if it tested positive or negative within those 48 hours.
Also with the requirement though, or the recommendation, sorry, by the CDC that people who have been vaccinated don't bother getting tested, even if they think they've come into contact with COVID or have contracted COVID, it seems more likely that people would end up testing if they're still feeling unwell 6 or 7 days later, as
Yeah.
opposed to, the first couple of days and then go get that test. It's like, okay, maybe it's not allergies. It's been 3 weeks at this point. So let's go get a COVID test.
Yeah, that all makes sense. Are there any more questions about our guideline things? Because I know we're approaching 1 o'clock and we wanted to share our covenant of care that it's still in developmental phase. I think we're close, but it's still in developmental phase. I know some of you, especially the families that have been attending some of the activities, have signed a waiver, and that's where we started. That came to us from our insurance company, but we decided to do something that was more in line with us as a covenantal community, with our covenant with each other, acknowledging some of the guidelines that we're putting forth, and then having your contact information on that, and then it would be kept. It mostly could be filled out online, and it would be kept where we could access, who has completed it, and it could be completed on paper as well. So we want to share that, and I think Michelle's going to do that sharing, and then we'll wrap up our meeting.
Well, Pat, I thought I was going to share that.
Oh.
Why?
Do you want me to bring it up?
Yes, I have it on my computer, but it doesn't seem like the screen share is taking it for whatever reason.
I need to. Okay, let me
So
find
folks,
it.
don't panic. We're not going to go through this whole thing. We just wanted to show it to you. There'll be information in the messenger encouraging you to please complete yours online.
Okay, I need to give me a second. I need
Yeah,
to
go ahead.
shorten my view out of full screen so I can go find it.
While she's finding out, I'll just read the opening statement for you. It's we affirm, promote, and are guided by our UU principles. As such, we understand that we are connected through the interdependent web of life, and we value the life and health of all who gather with us in community. We are committed to follow the findings of science and medicine in our decision-making. Our faith calls us to care for one another and take what precautions we can to protect the health of every person who wishes to participate in gatherings at San Gabriel. As a covenantal community, we place our trust in one another to create safe and nurturing spaces for learning, reflecting, and building community. We view the wearing of masks, the practice of physical distancing, and the adherence to other safety protocols during in-person activities to be an expression of our respect for others and ourselves. So there'll be several things like I agree to use effective hygiene, I agree to wear a mask, physical distance, to schedule space in advance so we can maintain some control and order. And then if symptoms do occur, we'll change the wording on that in a time frame that we will get a COVID test and inform the board. And then basically it's just signing. We haven't decided yet if every individual do this or per household, but that's what we were thinking as our way of everybody trying to show respect and taking steps to do so to keep everybody safe. Again, that will be up on the website, and we will send you information to be able to complete that online. Anything else you wanted to say about that, Pat?
No, but if there are questions, comments, or any final questions for us while we're here. We did, or we are still recording this session.
Hi, it's Karina.
Oh,
I don't know
hey,
if you can
Karina.
hear me. I'm in my car right now. I don't know if you, the one thing I wanted to ask was one kind of rule I've heard is, that there's 3 things that you can ask for. You can ask to be outdoors, you can ask to be socially distant, and you can ask to be masked. And getting 2 out of 3 is a good outcome. And I will say, I think for the children, being outdoors and masked, we can handle. Distance is very difficult. We certainly were not distant today. We were outdoors, we were masked, but we were not 6 feet apart. So I'm just curious if you've heard that similar guidance and if that's a possibility for us.
I hadn't heard that before, but it's certainly something that we should probably consider. I mean, I know as an adult in Sun City, where it appears that the pandemic never occurred, it's a whole different world. So, trying, even for me, trying to navigate putting these restrictions in for the well-being of our inclusive community it's a step, because the people around me, the pandemic never happened. So, and I know, I don't think I'm the only person experiencing that.
Yeah. And
But
again,
thank you for that reminder, Karina.
They are guidelines. We're suggesting things.
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to be having patrollers saying, hey, you're 5.5 feet. And actually, when we moved to the next phase, we were talking about maybe about 3 feet apart, the chairs, et cetera. And so, again, we will encourage and it's a guideline.
And a couple other things that I thought of, though, too, to a point that I think Dave was making. We will have masks available for people who arrive and have not remembered to bring a mask or don't have one. And for the group leaders who get tasked with doing some disinfecting, which will most likely be with wipes. I've done some research, and some of the wipes are like Clorox wipes, which are pretty easy to find now, do pretty instantaneous kill of viruses. We will also have a supply of what I like to call one size fits nobody gloves. So if you don't want to be handling the wipes, you can stick your hands in one of those kind of gloves and use them. So, those are other things that we're looking towards. Any other comments, thoughts?
Well, and to speak to Karina's thing, I think that's very true as a parent. And I think Amy or Sarah were the ones that gave me this analogy, is that it's like Swiss cheese. And so you layer your mitigation protocols to try to fill in all those holes, because one thing is not going to stop viral spread. And so your mitigation protocols add up as many layers as possible and as practical in this situation to be able to keep the viral particles from being able to penetrate and actually infect you. So that's a very good point, Karina. And we all know, especially with younger children, that we're not able to keep them apart. We've all experienced that. And so a lot of us as parents have we've developed these pods. And, we know that this family has similar mitigation protocols as, us. And so those children are allowed to play outside. We still have not had any children inside our house. And so, but outside we allow him to play with 2 or 3 neighbor kids that also take this seriously. And we know that they've got protocols in place for when they go out in public and in crowded areas.
Okay, thanks, Jana. I just want to remind everybody, we have been recording this, and so sometime next week we'll have Al get it up on the website. So, and we'll put some announcements out so other people can see and hear what we've shared. We'd like to share this widely among the members of the congregation. And I'm gonna close us out with the chalice extinguishing. May the truth that sets us free and the hope that never dies and the love that casts out fear lead us forward together throughout our lives on earth. Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate that you were all here today.